And welcome back to Top Cheddar Sports. It is NHL Wednesday. I am Brett here to talk about those California hockey teams, the Anaheim Ducks, the Los Angeles Kings, and the San Jose Sharks, and give a season outlook for them as we enter the Pacific Division here, our second division that we will be covering. So the Pacific last year it had a very different look from years past, with the Flames, the Knights, and the Sharks coming out of the West. This was a division that was kind of dominated by the Kings and the Sharks for a while, and the Ducks were always up there, mentioning these California teams, but obviously in recent years, tide is kind of shifting a little bit. So will that continue, or will it go back to the dominance? Let's get right into it. Let's start with the Anaheim Ducks. I have the Ducks as trending pretty steady, not up or down. What the Ducks brought in this offseason, they bring in Chris Weidman and Michael Del Zotto to help out their defensive core a little bit. And they brought in Anthony Stolarz as probably their backup goalie to Ryan Miller slash John Gibson. We'll kind of see how that plays out. They did re-sign Ryan Miller to an extension as well, and the biggest news of the offseason probably surrounding the Ducks is not necessarily a positive one, but Corey Perry has been bought out. Longtime Duck his whole career, will no longer be on the Ducks this year, so that's obviously kind of a shock for the hockey world. I mean, it makes financial sense for the Ducks to do, as he has not been the player he has been in years past. But that is kind of sad to see. So where I have the Ducks finishing this season is sixth in the Pacific Division and missing the playoffs. I don't think they got much worse from last year, but I definitely don't think they got better. They're kind of in this weird phase where they kind of are rebuilding, and they do have some good young pieces. Troy Terry comes to mind. Jacob Silverberg comes to mind. But at the same time, they're still weighed down by these bad contracts. Ryan Getzlaf comes to mind. So Ryan Kessler especially comes to mind. He's probably the most overpaid player in the league. So they're still kind of weighed down by these contracts, and they just don't have a ton of good young pieces yet. So I see them having a very similar year to last year, and just not very good, not terrible, but just kind of a mediocre hockey team that's kind of stuck in a transitional phase still coming into this year. Speaking of mediocre, let's talk about the Los Angeles Kings, who suffered probably their worst year in like the past, God, probably since like the 2010 season, this past season. The Kings finished dead last in the Pacific. That's where I have them again this year. I have them finishing 8th in the Pacific, missing the playoffs. I have them trending down because I think they somehow got even worse this offseason. The only person they really brought in is Martin Frk on a contract I do really like. This is a two-way contract for a veteran guy that I think could be a valuable piece for them, a valuable depth forward. So I do really like that. But talk about a team tied down by bad contracts. Jonathan Quick is getting up there in age. He's still on a bad contract. Drew Doughty's on a bad contract. Jeff Carter's on a bad contract. I mean, Dustin Brown's on a bad contract. They have a bunch of aging players still locked up for high money, pretty long term, and they're just not producing anymore. They're getting up there in age. So it's going to be another really tough season for the Los Angeles Kings. I really just don't see much positives for them right now, unfortunately, for Kings fans. The one thing the Kings did also do that I like, just as a franchise, is they did not bring back Slava Voinov, who had his suspension reduced due to the whole domestic violence situation involving him. They refused to bring him back. They said they will have no interest in signing a player like that on their team. So kudos to the Kings. I know I mentioned that before. I wanted to bring it up again. Very good looks on them. Voinov did sign in the KHL, so he will be playing overseas, probably for the rest of his career, because I don't think any NHL team really will bring him in. But again, the Kings, I have them finishing last. I think it's going to be a tough season for them. And they're definitely going to be looking to move as many of those contracts as they can at the deadline. Maybe a contender will bite and take one of them on, hopefully for their sake. They really need to get those contracts out so they can really amp up this rebuild. Even a guy like, something to watch for them this season, I think even a guy like Anze Kopitar could be a name that gets moved. Kopitar's a guy, obviously still produces, one of the most underrated players in the league, in my opinion, still. But looking at the situation the Kings are in as a whole, it just would make sense for both him and the Kings to kind of move on. The Kings can get in a lot of valuable pieces for him, I'm sure, and Kopitar can go to a team that will be ready to win sooner than the Kings. So I would watch out for Kopitar getting moved along with any of those other contracts. For me, there's really no one on the Kings, I think, at this deadline that's untouchable for them. Last but not least, the last San Jose team we'll talk about, the only team in San Jose. The last California team will be the San Jose Sharks. The Sharks had an interesting offseason. Obviously, Joe Pavelski's gone. They re-signed Timo Meier to a very team-friendly contract, which I liked. The only person they really brought in is Dalton Prout, just a depth defenseman there. They locked up Erik Karlsson to an 8-year extension, now the highest paid defenseman in the league. Can't say it's not deserved, but it is quite the contract still. I'm a little iffy on that one. So the Sharks re-signed some key pieces. They lost Pavelski. It's pretty much the same team coming back, but I do have them trending down. And the only reason for that is, while they're pretty much the same team, losing Pavelski will hurt them to the point that I think an up-and-coming team will just surpass them in the standings. I'm not going to say who, because I'll get into that at a later video. You're going to have to just watch and find out. But I have the Sharks finishing 4th in the Pacific this year and actually missing the playoffs, which will be... They don't miss the playoffs very often, so it's gonna be an interesting year for the Sharks. I do have them finishing like 9th in the West. I think they'll be right there in the playoff picture, but I do have them just missing it. Martin Jones really took a step back last year. I don't see him improving much. I thought he kind of was overplaying himself in his first few years in San Jose. I didn't think he was as good as his numbers were. I think we're going to see more of the Martin Jones of last year from here on out. So I don't like that. I think injuries could really be something that derails this team. I just don't really like their depth. And again, losing Pavelski, a leader like that, it's going to be tough for them to overcome. So I do still think they'll be a very good hockey team, but I do have them missing the playoffs, finishing 9th. So that'll do it for these California teams, the 3 California teams. Let me know what you think. Let me know, what you think about the Sharks. I don't think anybody can really question that the Kings will probably struggle again this year. But let me know if you think the Kings will be better than I think, and same with the Ducks. And then let me know if you think the Sharks will make the playoffs, because I have them as a fringe playoff team, but I'd like to know what you guys think. Leave a like, leave a comment, smash that subscribe button. Victor will have the NFL for you tomorrow, and I won't be seeing you guys until next Wednesday when we'll get into the 2 Alberta teams, the Edmonton Oilers and the Calgary Flames, and we'll give a season outlook for them.